Pop.
Daily
It's
Solutions.
a Pop.
Daily
It's a podcast.
Daily
It's a
Solutions.
podcast, baby.
It's a daily
Podcast.
Solutions.
Hey there, everybody.
Hello, Graham here.
This is Ashkahn.
And today's question is, should I have a blog for my flippin' float tank center? Doesn't actually say. No, I
you
put
added that in
Yeah,
for flair.
sorry, whoever asked that question. I took creative liberties there.
They should warn them under where they submit. We might add flair to your question.
I just delete your entire question, make up something else that sounds better. Yeah.
What was the question?
Something about flips. Should I have a blog? Should I have a blog for my float tank
Blog.
center?
That's right. Okay. Cool.
I would say probably not. But there's an exception to that.
Because it's hard.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Like it sounds, especially if you're like, I'll just put up a blog post once a month. How hard could that be? Like
Hard is
there's
the answer.
whole internet graveyards filled of blogs that have about like 2 posts.
Yeah.
It's like the first one and then the second one came 2 weeks later than they planned on
like,
it, and then the
"Welcome to
third
my
one
blog."
just yeah.
Second one's like,
I'm
I got
going to be
all
putting out a
sorts of
post every
things.
week, and the next one's
Yeah.
like, I mean, every month and a half. There's no third post, right? And I think that looks bad. I think that having a float center, and if you have especially a big blog link at the top or blog
Right.
posts on your homepage or something like that, and you kind of got it all tied in at the beginning, like you really planned on updating it, and then it just turns into nothing, and they're looking back, and there's posts from 2018, only now we're in 2020, and that's what they're finding. Like, it doesn't reflect well on your brand.
No.
It kind of says, I don't maintain things, and I'm unable to keep my promises, right?
And it really is. It's not a small amount of work. Like writing blog posts, usually people try to put, a certain amount of polish onto their blog posts, and the process of writing it and editing it and all that sort of stuff is usually more work than people think it is. And we have a blog. Like, we know how much work it takes. Like, our Floating Solutions site has a blog, and it's no small feat to like keep content, like good, edited content coming into that thing.
Yeah, I mean, the combined man hours per blog post that we put out through the Float Tank Solutions blogs are anywhere from about 10 to 15 hours. And sometimes for some of the bigger, more researched ones, that can really easily go up to more like 20 hours of man hours going into a post. And when you're thinking, I'm going to set aside a couple hours every month to write one, it comes at a really big surprise. You set aside those couple hours and you're 1/5 of the way through having a polished post. You're like, oh boy, I have to go clean these rooms and check out customers, right? So understandably, it's one of the first things to get dropped in favor of bigger responsibilities you actually have towards your business.
It's really easy to let it slip.
Which is what makes me say maybe you shouldn't start one to begin with. Right?
Yeah.
Or be ready to exit. Like, get 2 posts in, realize you're not going to do this, and just remove it from the blog. Take it down, call it a failed experiment, and move on, right?
Or write 10 posts before you even put it up.
Oh, that's great advice. Definitely do
that.
that. Pre-stock if you can get to 10 posts, and you're allowed to have a blog.
Yeah.
Because it's like at one a month, that's almost a year's worth of content. Now you just have, 2 more you have to write during the next 10 months, which probably won't happen still because you'll find other things you need to do,
So why do you have a blog then? Why does anyone even want a blog?
So the nice thing about blogs is Google really likes fresh content on websites. It likes things that you've written yourself. And as you can imagine, just reminding people, your customers that you exist is really nice for a business. Maybe someone hasn't been into float in 6 months and it's your blog post specifically on how floating helps anxiety or floating helps pregnancy that they see come out or that they get emailed to them if they got subscribed, that reminds them how much they should come in, especially if they're pregnant or anxious in this case, right? So it's great for pulling on customers. It's good for Google Juice and letting people find you in the first place.
And Google specifically, for like keyword searching, the amount of times you're going to use the word float or float tank or all that sort of stuff, if you have a blog versus just a website, is going to be way, way more, right? Imagine the amount of times you're going to say float tank over the course of your blog versus how many times it would actually just appear on your website without a blog. And you can see why that can just like up the keyword count a ton.
Yep, and one other thing I'll add in too is I think that if you are able to keep it up consistently, you say you're going to launch a blog and do a post every month or something like that, and you do, and you've been doing this consistently for a few years, that also reflects really well on your business. It is really hard to keep up on a blog. So if you're able to do something consistently and churn something out on this regular schedule, I believe that actually gives you a few points in your customers' eyes, your prospective customers who are looking at your site.
But it's hard.
But
Yeah,
it's really hard. It's really time consuming. To do the Float Tank Solutions blog, to give you an idea, we actually had to hire on 2 people to help specifically just with the copy editing and take the content that Ashkahn and I are kind of churning out and put that into written form. Like, we didn't have enough time to just manage the blog ourselves. So,
and we have an illustrator, like illustrate pictures for it. Like it's a project.
so if you do decide to go that route, it might be that you need someone to actually be your own copy editor, to take things, to format them in WordPress, like figure out the roles that you can outsource to someone else, and just plan on actually paying money to get those blogs into reality rather than spending your own time on it. Might be the more sane approach.
And it's interesting, too. I don't think it's necessarily the type of business that would even benefit the most from having a blog. Like, I think there's, in terms of bang for your buck in blogs, like, I think if you actually can pull it off and you're writing a good blog, like, it's going to help your business. But, like, you see the type of businesses that really, I think, benefit from blogs, and especially, like, online informational sort of stuff. Like, if you're trying to sell some sort of Photoshop product and you have a really robust blog covering all sorts of various like Photoshop issues and stuff, like then when someone types in a very specific Photoshop problem, like the chances that you'll have a blog post that covers that leads them back to your website to where you actually kind of have different products for them, like that is such a nice like funnel in for people.
Yeah, it's kind of the problem is it's not broad in either of the directions that makes a blog post more universally applicable, right? There's geographical location, which is one of them. If you run a geographically independent business, all of a sudden your blog posts can reach people all over the world, and that's really helpful for you.
Right.
If you're writing blog posts in Boston and they're reaching everyone all across the world, really only the everyone who happens to exist near you are the ones who are going to actually boost up numbers in your business, right? Mm-hmm. And the other ones I see that are really useful are like things to do in an area. Like all of the different things that you could do in Portland or somewhere else, right? And we're not that either. We're kind of just talking about a specific activity in a specific region, which kind of immediately makes you question what your maximum readership could possibly be, right? Who are the people who are into floating enough they're going to read a blog post every single month who also live in your area? And even if that's a large portion of your customers, it's still not a very large readership for the amount of time necessary to go into making it happen, which, again, I think is why it's difficult, why it gets dropped early, and why I don't see many people who are only running float centers who successfully manage to maintain a long-running blog.
Yeah, it's like unless you're like really enjoy it and like you just constantly have like stuff in your head, you're like, I gotta write this down and get it out and have this blog post. Like your time's probably spent better doing some other form of marketing for your float center.
So there you go. Don't start a blog unless you legitimately have a problem.
Unless there's something in your head. You can't shut it up.
like I have with Ashkahn's voice on a regular basis. Every morning wake up and it's there. All right. So.
Great. If you guys have more questions, you can hop over to floattanksolutions.com/podcast.
And shoot them off our way.
Yeah. We'll talk to you guys later.
Yep. We'll either answer them here or put it in our blog.